Good morning, Northpoint. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
I said, I love you, girl boss Jen.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Chelsea. It's made it awkward for everybody here. I love this. Well, actually, what I was going to say is when the lights came up, I was like, we need to have a conversation with the people that structure the order of our services, because that baptism was so amazing. I just should leave. Like, that should be amen, and I should just walk away, because that was so great. Well, if you didn't hear Chelsea, tell everybody. My name is Jennifer Mazzola. I'm part of the teaching team here at Northpoint, and I'm particularly thankful this morning that we get an hour-ish of your time, especially after Jeremy Edlin last week broke down what our life looks like based on hours. So on an average lifespan of 72 years, we get around 600,000 hours in our lifetime. And there's lots of things that go into that time, right? We get 230,000 hours on average sleeping. We get a chunk of time for eating, chunk of time. This screen time thing made me really concerned for you guys. Really worried about you, because I'm sure it has nothing, that doesn't relate to me. Exercising, 4,300, school, 8,000, laughing, 3,600. This one in here, I came home after church last Sunday, and I was so thankful to Jeremy for bringing this one up, because it sparked great conversation with my husband and I. Jeremy shared that we, on average, get ready for 2,200 hours. That's the average between guys and girls. Spend 42,000 hours with our friends. And then we have this other category, 96,000 hours doing all the other things. And I realized this week that if you start attending Northpoint like in your 30s-ish, and you come on average every other week, that means that we get you for 1,144 hours. It's a really tiny sliver. And I am thankful that I get one of those this morning. But that still leaves us with 90,000 hours, which is what this whole series is about that we started last week, and we're going to continue, is that you will work for an average of 90,000 hours. You will spend an average of 90,000 hours, almost a quarter of your waking life, working in your career. And that's regardless of what your title might be. Maybe you're an owner, you're a VP, you're an executive, you're an assistant, you're an individual contributor. That doesn't really matter how you get paid. Maybe you get paid commission. Maybe you've got commission and a base pay. Maybe you're an hourly wage earner, or maybe you are invested in stock, kind of got those golden handcuff things going on. Maybe it doesn't really matter what field you come from either. Retail, engineering, finance, ministry, events, medical. You are going to spend about a quarter of your waking life working, and that warrants discussion. Last week, Jeremy challenged us to kind of reframe the way we think of that daily grind and that 9 to 5, using a passage from Paul that says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, not as if working for the Lord, not for human masters. Just kind of challenging us to say, hey, that thing that you're doing that feels like you're working for a paycheck, feels like you're working for a boss. Like, what if you reframed that and you worked for something or someone that was bigger? Just pushing us to consider that your work matters because of who you work for. So last week we asked the question, and we're just going to continue this week with the same question. How are your 90,000 hours going? How are your 90,000 hours to you? How do they feel right now? Now, I know a lot of people actually think I work here. I don't work here. I actually have a job outside here where it's like a full-time job with like a salary. This is actually my current work team right here. I don't know what we were doing and why we were in a park, but we have been working together for about 5 years. I love this team. It's a great team. And even though I love my team and my job, like last week, Jeremy had us finish the song, what was it? Everybody's working for the... Thank you. So this week, though, even as amazing as my work team is, I just want to kind of acknowledge the moments that we actually would rather be singing, take this job and... See, because I'm a volunteer, you can yell shove it at me. That's kind of, I can encourage that. Right, because we all have moments where we just feel stuck, where we just feel trapped, or we just feel like we're trapped in this tension or this endless cycle of drama, or we just are in between jobs. We're all going to experience a moment of being stuck. If we haven't already, you might walk toward that in some point. And some of you right now feel very stuck. when it comes to work. But last week we started to have a conversation around if we're designed to work, we're made to work, and that work produces great things for the world and great things for us. But 25% of your waking life is going to be spent working. We think it's good to have a conversation around that sometimes that work isn't easy and isn't really always fun because we might be in a stuck season. We might be a little trapped and a little tense at work. Now, I've experienced stuck seasons, I think most of you have, but I wanted to this morning actually invite some friends out to come and talk with us about stuck seasons. Now, the great part about doing life in community, when you actually get to do life in circles like this, you get to learn that, one, you're not the only one that's ever felt stuck or been stuck, but two, even though we're all unique and have our own journeys and our own stories and work in our own fields, we all have something we can learn from each other. So I just want to thank you guys for coming out and reliving some of your most traumatic and difficult work experiences with us publicly. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down the road. I just want you to introduce yourselves, please, and then just kind of give us your work history so the room can kind of know what your journey's been. Then we'll ask a few other questions too. I wanted to start with you, Angie, because we get to hear you every Sunday morning, right? It's like ridiculously good. And but we don't probably pause to ask ourselves, like, what do you do during the week? Yeah, we're just like, okay, that was great. And then, so talk to us a little bit about your work story.
Well, first, can I say hi, everybody? My name's Angie, and I sing. I didn't always sing. When I was growing up in Alabama, I went to high school and college there, and I majored in business, and so I was just trying to be the best business person I could. My life's story brought me here to Texas after my young marriage didn't work out. Came here and got a job at a big corporation. I had that for a long time. I thought I was the queen of this company. But I did eventually get laid off. At the same time, God was building up. He revealed a gift that he placed in me. I did not know that I could sing. But at the same time that the corporate job was ending, the music was starting to become large in my life. So when that ended, I found myself on stages. And so I did both. You know, I found some little, nothing as high responsibility as that first corporate job, but I did both for a few years and realized I can't do both of these forever. So I could make a choice which one I want to do, and I decided I'm gonna give singing my everything. So I've been a full-time musician for about the last 10 years, and what that's brought me is the gig life. That's what my week looks like. I was singing with different bands. I am often in the studio with headphones on, doing someone's background vocals for their great project. I even made a music video a couple weeks ago for someone else. All stepping out of my comfort zone, but just saying yes to all these wonderful different opportunities. And I've been very blessed to be able to say that I can make my living as a musician. And for the most part of my career, I've been able to know for like a year in advance, like what I'm going to be doing. The calendar's been full for the most part.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. We love that we get to be a part of what God's doing in your life with your gifts. So you keep singing, please, every Sunday. Yep. Shane.
Hi, Jen.
We just saw your daughter, Kaylee, baptized.
Yeah, I was backstage crying the whole time.
I know. We were giving you tissues. I know.
Yeah, huh? Oh,
Yeah,
hi, everyone. I'm Shane. My daughter, Kaylee.
No, we'll just sit here as long as you want.
Yeah. I don't know what I'm doing. Where are we again? So I grew up in Canada, and honestly, I had no idea what I wanted to do when I grew up, so I went to school for network administration, whatever that means. I married a Texan, moved to Texas, and stumbled into oil services industry, where I worked 15 years for an oil services company doing a variety of things. I started in a network support center that was 24/7, 365 days of the year, so I got to work Christmases, holidays, nights, all the wonderful times a day. I moved into field engineering, where I traveled to some of the not-so-pretty parts to test software and hardware products on oil rigs. Moved into product support, product line management, and then finally engineering management prior to coming on staff here at Northpoint as the director of connection. So from oil services to church.
Makes so much
Yeah,
sense.
totally.
Yeah, totally could follow that trajectory. Not at all. Kelsey? Yep.
My name is Kelsey Bond. I went to Texas A&M University. Got a degree in biology and chemistry. I taught high school physics for a little while, then spent a few years in corporate America. When my husband and I had our first child, I really felt that I wanted to be at home, so I transitioned to being a stay-at-home mom until COVID hit. That I needed to spend a few years back in the workforce. I came actually to work here at Northpoint for a season. Then once our finances allowed, I could move back home, and that's where I am. I'm with my 2 kiddos at home right now.
That went really fast. All right, so good morning. My name's Todd Pomeroy. I graduated from UT in '92. It seems like a really long time ago.
There's way more of the Gig'em things than the Hookem thing.
I
Yeah.
know. I'm wearing a tech shirt, though. My son goes there. So what can I say? Wreckham. I met my beautiful bride at UT. I got a math degree and was a math nerd. And then immediately after that, I went into the fire department, which, much to my parents' chagrin, they cried a lot and questioned my sanity. From that, I've had 30 years now. I've been there for 30 years. I've got to serve on both sides of the fence. There's a staff side, which does the budget, does logistics, and so I was sort of using my degree. And then the other side of the fence is operations, where we basically go and get to, with our best friends, create order from chaos. And
You were on a call at like 2 a.m. this morning,
oh my
right?
gosh,
Came straight here.
I was on a call thinking about
Saving lives, but then also about this panel.
right,
Yeah.
but I can't say it now, but it wasn't the coolest of calls, because sometimes we go and just have to dig in the earth. It's not a sexy call, if you will, but you can't.
So isn't it good to know that some of those calls are sexy?
Yeah.
Sexy calls. Okay.
It's just getting
That's for another
dirty and
series.
turning gas
we'll
off.
unpack
It's
that in
not
the marriage series a little bit. yeah.
Exactly. So that's me.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, it would take a panel like a mile long to actually capture all the different nuances that we experience in work, right? All of our different fields, our different experiences. But so we don't have all morning, but I do kind of want to just ask each of you a question. I want to start with you, Kelsey, because so I've always worked. My kids have been, whether we had like a nanny for a minute or we were in daycare with them, but I've always been a working mom. And I know that that's a lot of tension that we as women feel, right? No matter what we end up doing, if we end up staying home for a season or staying home indefinitely, or we end up working the whole time. But it sounds like you've landed, and you've landed where you want to land. Do you feel like this is it?
Thank you for the loaded question, Jen.
You're welcome. That's what I'm here for.
I have found joy and I have found struggle in both. You're right about the questions. And even when you choose to stay home, the questions don't stop. You still wonder, should I be providing financially for my family? Am I doing this job right? Am I messing up my kids? Would they benefit from a more social environment? And we ask questions because we care. I really do think it's just an indicator that we care about our job. And with any job, you want to make the right decisions and you want to produce the best outcome. But those questions can also get you stuck in uncertainty and doubt. So I'm really grateful for the season that God placed me here at the church. I'm grateful because he reignited a passion for me to stay home with my kids. And he also reaffirmed that that's what he had for me in that season. That's where he wanted me. So I did feel stuck because I wanted to be home with them and I couldn't be. Meanwhile, my husband was navigating his own season of stuck with unemployment. But just like Jeremy said last week, just because it's hard doesn't mean it can't be good. And we have found that God has produced some of the best fruit in those hard, stuck seasons because he was refining us, he was realigning our family values, he was equipping us, and I'm grateful for that looking back. And now he was just opening doors all along the way, opening and closing them based on his plan. And now I am back at home, and I'm so happy to be there. But I've also come to the realization that there are just going to be moments of feeling stuck in every season, with every job, and that's okay. That the grass just might look temporarily greener on the other side. For me, I try to keep in mind that, every day is hard, and that's with any job, and burnout is real in every job, and that includes this one. You know, there are days my 3-foot boss will lose his mind because I cut his pancakes in squares instead of triangles. So the grass might look a little green on that day, but it's okay because it's just the season I'm in, and it is hard, but it's so good at the same time. And just reminding myself that I'm not working for an end of year payout bonus or a promotion. That's not motivating me. Mine is a long-term investment and a long-term payout that I just can't see yet. So leaning in on God and just kind of trusting that what he's doing in me and my kids, he's using all of it. And later I may find myself back in the workforce, and he can use what he's doing now to equip me later in life, and that none of it is wasted.
Love that, yeah. Yeah, so I've had the opportunity to spend some time with each of them, so I kind of know their stories a little more. And I wanted to ask you a question because Todd and I were talking backstage. I am a fireman's daughter. I was born with a fireman. He was a fireman before I was born, and then he was all the way through his career. And I also had like 9 other fathers with me, like all the time. But in my mind, like firemen are like, we don't have time. Like there's like, it's tough. It's get the job done. It's get focused. Get in, fix the problem. There's not a lot of time for like soft skills conversation, you know, and not a lot of time to worry about feelings. It feels like as a job, but you had an experience in your career where you had to kind of take a second.
Yeah, thanks for bringing up one of the most hurtful times in my life. I really appreciate that.
Yes.
That's good. But with that being said, it was also the most catalytic because going through that megaphone of pain is when I perked up, listened, and then really began my greatest series of growth. About 15 years ago, I was promoting to captain and was assigned to one of the busiest stations in Austin. And the first thing I did was met with my new boss and said, hey, what's your expectation? And basically they said, you know, just follow the rules. And I'm like, I have a math brain, got it, we'll just follow the rules. 8 months later, I was force transferred out. And in my world, that's like getting fired. I was crushed, felt like a failure, and just really didn't have a lot of, I was spiraling, if you will. I was truly stuck. And because of that pain in that moment, I was thinking in my head, like, I don't ever want to go through this again. And so what can I do to change this outcome? And so that began my journey in terms of looking at simple things like personality tests, learning how I was wired. I sought wisdom from mentors, folks that have served in the military and also in public safety, who sat across from me and would just say, hey, you just have to own it right now. You have to own it and move on. Gather what you can and move on. Reading books on group dynamics like Blink or 5 Dysfunctions of a Team to really start to understand how group dynamics works. And this is weird, right? I've been 15 years, I've already been there doing it. And then last but not least, which was really catalytic and put it together, was this little article, and I actually think Northpoint, somebody forwarded it to me from Northpoint, and it was, Goldman wrote it, it was about emotional intelligence. And the most successful companies in the world basically have this secret sauce, and it's that you don't just know about you, but you also have the empathy to know about your teammates and have that drive and desire to know how they're wired too. And so up until I was forced transferred out, I would have said, I'm a firefighter, and then faith and family would definitely come in second. Just a lot of pride. And after going through that, what I just call my lowest time, where, I slept poorly, had knots in my tummy all the time, just was a wreck. Now, on the other side of that, I'm really grateful that happened because it changed my grid to say, no, it's faith, family, and fire. And I do love the teammates that I have. We get to solve difficult problems, and I love them as well. But that definitely changed my grid going through that stuck season.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of us will experience stuck moments because maybe it's like a hierarchy or a structure within our workplace, or maybe there's politics within our workplace, and we'll end up feeling stuck because something is going on in those dynamics. But so I love sharing that. I didn't mean to make you relive it. I mean, I did totally mean to make you relive it, but thank you for sharing that. And Angie, that kind of makes me, though, also remember when you and I were talking, so there's those moments when structure and hierarchy will kind of knock you down or put you in a season of being stuck. But there's also people, which are so great and so also not so great sometimes. And so you've had a work situation where it was more of a people issue.
Yes, but before I talk about that, can I tell you how Shane and I are holding on for dear life on these tall bar stools?
We know. First of all, can we just notice that Shane's feet dangle? Like, that is adorable, Shane.
Gripping these things.
This is,
Next time, can we get the
yeah.
children's stools?
Yes, yes.
But yes, if y'all can't tell this about me already, I am a peoplest people person. I love strangers. I hug strangers. I'm built to want to know people, want to connect. And so the jobs, the assignments that I've had have brought me into some really amazing spaces, either celebrating and joining in the joyous, most happiest day of someone's life, say for a wedding, for another celebration, and also for some of the most painful times of someone's life, bedside at a terminally ill patient, singing for them, or funeral, memorial, being tasked with bringing hope, bringing comfort, bringing peace to a family during these times. And in all of these situations, I just can't help it. It's just how I'm built. It's not just a job to me. It's like I give my whole heart. I give my whole self in these situations. And I'm made to connect. And so doing that, I think it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes it's really authentic. And I think that means a lot for the people in those moments. But for me also, it can make me very vulnerable to the
Other stuff.
Can we say sharks?
Yeah, well, you can say whatever you want.
Sharks,
You
okay.
don't, I mean, I don't know if you were, I don't
There's
know how
sharks
that
in
works.
those waters at work sometimes, y'all. So, like I said, I'm just built to love you. I want to connect with you and everything. And so I have a tendency to get very close in my work situation. So this band that I helped form more than 10 years ago was my family, so to speak. And so we were very close, but then about 2 summers ago, things kind of started to change. The dynamic changed. Everything had been, very chummy and personal. And then just 2 years ago, we don't really know why these things happen per se, but personalities change over time. Things change, conditions change. And what used to feel like home and feel like family started to not feel so comfortable anymore and started to not be a place I looked forward to going anymore. I felt I could still execute the job, but the people, just the chemistry was beginning to get poor, and it just kept deteriorating until I found myself abruptly on the other side of a band that I helped start and out kind of in the cold. And so that was my stuck time was the period leading up to that, when I felt it starting to not be a fruitful situation for me, but I just couldn't will my legs to make a move. And so it's something I had to keep praying on till it just happened to me. And then after that, I was left to deal with the pieces of broken relationships, being iced out, not having those family, ties with people anymore, not knowing where my money was going to come from, missing suddenly a year's worth of work, and worried about what people were thinking about me, what my reputation must be like to be put out of a band that I helped form. So I had all these worries, but I also knew that there are things that are out of my control.
Yeah.
So what someone thinks about me, I really can't control that. All I can do is realize that I still have rent to pay, I still have car payment, and I still need to eat. And so however uncomfortable this new life is, I got to keep moving forward. So in that time, I really felt like no one to lean on but God. I just had to trust him and
Yeah.
where the spaces he was leading me. And it was all, when I look back, it's been a year. When I look back, I can see all the freedom that he was waiting to give me, the release from the anxiety that the other situation had brought. And he's been my provider. He's been my provider every bit of the way. And I know that all it was orchestrated by him. I might have been worried, but I know that he wanted to move me into something else. So.
You know, I think one of the reasons I love that we're doing this 90,000 series is because, again, churches don't often talk about our work lives, right? We spend a lot of conversations about what our own relationships with God look like, but how does that translate as a manager, as an employee, as a boss, or as a teammate? And we also don't often acknowledge like work trauma or work grief, where it's like a real thing when dynamics and tensions they can be really painful. And so I love, thank you for sharing that. Shane, I have a question for you.
Yes, Jen.
So Shane and I are in a community group together.
We are.
Shane's wife, Elena, has helped me navigate several seasons of parenting. I think she's kept me, at least whatever shred of sanity I feel like I have, it's a lot, it's attributed to her. Both of I have 2 sons, Shane has 12, and one of my sons and one of his sons go to Texas Tech together. So I have a lot of connections to Shane now, which is funny because I would not have had that if my husband didn't get a job opportunity and relocate here to Austin. But you had like the opposite side of a relocation moment that I don't think many people know about. Would you share?
Yeah, if you guys have served or worked in the oil industry services, you know that it's a very cyclical business. There are really great times and really bad times. And there was a season that my company was going through a really difficult season, and I showed up to work one day only to discover that they were laying off my entire department. I mean, just, it's the worst thing to see, watching people with the looks on their faces. They put everything in a box. And my manager approached me and said, "Hey, Shane, we're laying everyone off, but we'd love to offer you a position in Houston." And so I was stuck in a situation where I had to make a decision. Do I take this really good job in Houston, or do I stay in Austin? And at the time, my wife was 8 months pregnant with our second child, and she was a stay-at-home mom. And I didn't have a college degree. And I had tried really hard over these last several years to kind of make myself a name for myself at this company. And so on the outside looking in, the decision may have been really clear. Take the job, take care of your family, go to Houston. But there was something that my wife and I just couldn't, there's some tension we were feeling, like this doesn't seem right. So thankfully, God had surrounded us with a community of people that really cared about us. And so we decided, because we knew we weren't the smartest people in the room, so we invited people in to help us with this decision. And I don't remember the advice that these friends gave us, the words that they said, but what I do recall was they challenged us to think about this idea that my wife and I, we had grown tremendously in our marriage, in our parenting, in our faith, and was it worth potentially compromising those areas of our life that were very valuable to us for the sake of a financial security? Or could we trust God with the financial piece and prioritize those other areas of our life that were very important to us? And this was not an easy decision. And so through these conversations with friends we really trusted and through a lot of prayer, my wife and I decided that God was calling us to stay in Austin. So I went back to work, told my boss I'm not taking the job, and I got laid off. And I anticipated, I'm like, okay, God, I know something's coming. But I went through months where it was really difficult. It was probably the hardest few months of my life. And the great thing was I got to experience the power of community and God's faithfulness. Because what was crazy was I was pretty much down to like our last pennies for my severance, and the company actually called me back, the office in Austin, and the guy said, "Hey, would you like to come work for us again?" And so God is like, "Shane, you just had to wait. I've got something for you." And it was difficult to get there. But in these seasons of being stuck, I think what that taught me was it's not necessarily what you do when you're stuck that matters. It's who do you turn to when you're stuck? Because it's hard for us to see ourselves what's right when we're stuck in those situations.
I love that. Okay, so we could spend all morning with you, but they won't let me. So I want to go back down this row. If someone sitting out here is stuck, what is one thing, and because you guys are all communicators, just one thing you would say to them?
Sure, thanks. If I boiled it down for me, it would be choosing people over strict adherence to policy, choosing relationship, even over process gain, because that's going to pay so many dividends when you see people first I mean, we still have a job to do, but see people first in everything you do.
Mine would be if you're feeling stuck or in a hard season, don't rush too quickly to find the solution of getting yourself unstuck that you miss out on whatever it is that God might have for you in that hard season. You know, what is he trying to teach you? What does he want to show you? What does he want to refine in you during that time?
And I think when you're stuck, it's just, it's so hard to make good decisions on your own, especially when emotions are involved. And so I think a better question to ask is not what do you do when you're stuck, it's who do you invite in when you're stuck.
And so they all left me a lot of time because I'm the talking person. They were really quick so that I could talk forever. Thanks. Okay. What I would say is when you're feeling stuck, maybe try replacing the word stuck for still. And maybe trusting that perhaps God is just wanting you to be still. Sometimes he builds in times of rest for us where he still provides, but he's working on something for you. And just trust that whatever's on that other side is freedom. It's a better situation, a sweeter situation that you can imagine for yourself. So instead of being stuck, consider that you're just being still for a moment. And there's something waiting on the other side for you.
That's all good stuff, guys. Can we give them a round of applause? Thank you, thank you. Now, I want, stay with me for just a few more minutes, because I actually think the Bible has something to say about this idea of being stuck. I'm going to take us through a particular story in the Bible really, really quickly. So hang with me. So I didn't grow up in church. So whenever anybody would throw Bible stories at me when I was just learning or just stepping into community, I was totally lost because I didn't have any context. And that is 100% not the vibe I'm trying to create. But I do want to highlight that this collection of books that was written millennia ago has so many stuck stories. And I could spend all morning and then some just covering all and highlighting all the different stories of Joseph, of Esther, of the disciples, of Jonah. I mean, like, it's literally story after story after story. And I start with that to say that being stuck isn't new. This is not a new issue. Being stuck at work isn't new. But this morning, and I hope that's what you heard from the panel, is that I think we undervalue our stuck seasons. I think we miss something when we try and rush through them, or we miss something when we convince ourselves we just got to spend all of our energy and our attention trying to get out. We undervalue our stuck seasons because I actually think there's something in those stuck seasons for you. That those are actually moments for you to learn something like what Todd talked about, for you to experience something like what Kelsey shared, for you to trust God with something like Shane and Angie. See, I think this season that you're in, especially if you feel stuck right now at work, this season matters because God has something to show you, because you matter to God and he's trying to teach you something. Now, when we moved 5 years ago, I left a team that I'd worked with for 12 years, and I totally understood my career. I had trajectory. I knew what I was supposed to do. I loved who I worked with. I was respected. I felt like I had a lot of purpose, a lot of value, and a lot of clarity in my job. And I really expected that when I moved, that would unfold quickly in my life, and it did not. So I felt very, very stuck. That happened to also be a time that a friend of mine said, hey, would you want to read through the Bible chronologically with me? And yes, I'm weird. I just said, sure, yeah. Who doesn't want to do that all day long? So I was starting to read, and there was one moment that I was particularly stuck. Like, I felt so worthless. And I felt like I tried. I'd actually even put a couple of applications in or looked online for some stuff, and I felt like nothing's going to open up. I just don't even know how to do this. I was so frustrated with my resume. I just felt very, very stuck. And it happened to be the same morning I was reading the story, the early life story of King David, one of the kings of ancient Israel. And so I kind of want to go through this story with you really, really quickly. It's a lot of chapters, and you're going to get the Jen Mazzola condensed version. I hope that's okay. Let me give you a little backstory before we actually jump in. So Israel did not always have a king. The prophet Samuel did not think Israel needed a king, and God didn't really want Israel to have a king, but ancient Israel demanded a king. So they come to Samuel, and they're like, give us a king. Samuel tries to talk them out of it, and God says, no, just let them have what they want. So they get a king. This king is named Saul. And Saul actually is a great king for a season, and then things start to kind of go sideways. He kind of goes off the rail. And the people in Samuel are like, hey, we need a new king. So the prophet Samuel starts off on a quest to find a new king for ancient Israel. And he goes to this guy named Jesse who has 9 sons. And he's seen all first eight of the sons, and there's one left. And that's where I want us to jump in, because that's where I was reading that morning. Let's take a look at the text. There is still the youngest, Jesse answered. I've seen all 8, there's one left. He is tending the sheep. So Samuel said, send for him. So he sent for him and had him brought in, and the Lord said, rise and anoint him. This is my guy. This is the one. And from that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. I mean, this is kind of the moment, right? David is anointed king. So what you would imagine is that David starts to do all the king things. He goes to the king places, makes all the king decisions, wears the king clothes, does kingly stuff. But actually, if you keep reading, we realize that's not what happens to David. Let's keep looking. And Saul sent messengers, because Saul is still the king at this point, to Jesse, because he's heard about this kid, David, and says, hey, send me your son David, who is with the sheep. This is post this moment when he's announced king. So where does David go after he's been told he is the new king of ancient Israel? He goes back to the sheep. He goes back to doing what he did every single day. He goes back to the field to tend the sheep. And then Saul sends for him. And because Saul starts to have some other issues and hears about him, and so let's keep reading at what happens. David came to Saul and entered his service. And Saul liked him very much, and David became one of Saul's armor bearers. Then Saul sent word to Jesse and said, allow David to remain in my service, for I'm pleased with him. So this is at least some movement, right? Maybe it's not like a king-size promotion, but at least David's not in the field anymore. At least David's not tending sheep. He's now in the service of the king, so it's at least a little step closer to what we just saw that David knows he's supposed to be doing. Have you ever felt that? Have you ever known like you were meant for maybe something just a little more? Or maybe you're frustrated because you see someone else in a trajectory in their career and you don't understand why it just isn't happening for you. Or you have that coworker dynamic or that boss dynamic and you've had the conversation a million times. So it's like every time, maybe you make a little progress, but then you take a step back, and that's exactly what's about to happen to David. We'll keep reading. So Saul actually is going to start to go to war with the Philistines. And when he goes to war, let's see what happens. Jesse's 3 oldest sons followed Saul to war, but David went back to tend his father's sheep. I'm back in the field again. I'm stuck tending sheep again. I thought I had taken a step, but clearly not. I'm stuck here again. So now David's back in the field. Jesse's going to send David on an errand. Let's look at that. Now Jesse said to his son David, take this grain and these loaves for your brothers and hurry to their camp. Early in the morning, David left the flock in the care of another shepherd, loaded up and set out as Jesse had directed. David going right back to what he'd always done, stuck in the field with the sheep again. In a minute, so he's going to go to the front lines. There's going to be a super loud warrior. It's probably the story you're familiar of with David, like named Goliath, one of the larger Philistines. David's actually going to go to the front lines, engage Goliath in battle, and he's going to win. But none of that was what God was trying to talk to me about that morning. I just want to recap the story so that we understand. So here's just David's journey in the first part of his life. He's anointed king, goes back to the sheep. He has an opportunity to work for Saul. He goes back to tending the sheep. His dad sends him on an errand, and then things are actually going to start to change after this battle with Goliath, and his life is actually crazy. It's like reading a season of Yellowstone. It's insane. But for me that morning, I felt so stuck that I think God was trying to have me reframe that for a second and say, maybe you're not stuck. Maybe you're tending the sheep. Maybe what feels like step back, like what Todd experienced, what feels like a demotion, what feels stuck, isn't actually stuck at all. You're tending the sheep. I'm placing you in the field for a season, for a purpose. Your job for this moment is to tend the sheep. Now, what's kind of funny is that Saul's army and David's brothers are terrified of Goliath. So when David's walking up to battle Goliath, they ask him, why are you so brave? Who are you to have this courage? Who are you to be fearless? And this is David's response to Saul. David said to Saul, well, while your servant was tending his father's sheep, when a lion or a bear came and took a lamb from the flock, I went after him and attacked him and rescued it from its mouth. And when he rose up against me, I seized him by his beard and struck him and killed him. See, I think what confused Saul's army and David's brothers was, how does he have this confidence and courage? But it's because of what he experienced in the field with the sheep that prepared him to be king. It wasn't even the moment with Samuel or the title or the accolades. It was the moment and the time being stuck in the field with the sheep that actually was preparing him to be the leader that he was going to need to be when he does step in to being king. Your stuck season, those moments that you feel stuck, are actually for you. They are actually for your benefit. God is trying to show you something. And just a few things that I think you can get out of your stuck seasons. One, you get the opportunity to practice gratitude, like Kelsey talked about, where she's like, whether my 3-foot boss is mad that I cut the pancakes wrong, I get to practice still being thankful. You also get to practice an opportunity for personal improvement, like Todd talked about. It would have been very easy for Todd to get bitter and resentful when he felt demoted. But instead, he got to work. Imagine if you feel stuck right now, if you spent less energy frustrated and complaining and spent more energy developing the next skill that you're going to need, adding something to your resume, listening to podcasts, reading books about being a better leader. That would actually prepare you for your next chapter more than the complaining and the energy and frustration. You also get the opportunity to just learn to be faithful in small things, like what Shane talked about. I'm just going to trust. I'm just going to go ahead and be faithful to who I know I'm trying to be right now. And I know I feel stuck and I don't know how this is going to work out, but I'm going to just take it step by step by step, which is also what Angie had to do. She had to learn to trust that God would deal with the things she could not control. And I so relate to Angie's story. I've had work dynamics where I could not control what people thought of me, said about me, what my reputation was, and I just had to keep tending the sheep. God has placed you in a particular field with some particular sheep right now. And yes, you might feel stuck. But I don't know, because we're all different, I don't know what he's trying to show you. And that's what I don't want us to miss. That we spend so much time trying to get unstuck that we miss what we're actually needing to learn to get to the next level. And I hope that's what you heard from everybody that was up here. That even though it is or was hard, I learned something from it, and I'm better for it. Imagine the kind of boss or employee you're going to be if you take that stuck season and stop fighting it and started to do like Angie said and get still. I'm going to pray for us. I'm particularly going to pray for those of us that feel stuck, but then also the rest of us too. Father, I thank you for stuck seasons. Lord, I thank you that what David learned in the field as he practiced, as he trained, as he tended the sheep that you had entrusted to him is what prepared him to really be king. And God, I don't know if we feel stuck right now, but I pray that our eyes would be open to what you're trying to show us in that season, that we wouldn't rush past it and miss what you had to teach us so that we can be prepared in the next chapter. And God, for those of us that maybe we don't feel stuck right now, what do we need to be working on so that when those seasons do arrive, we already know who we are? That's why David was able to approach Goliath with such confidence, because he already knew how to fight. He already knew how to walk out from his time with the sheep in the field. He knew who to be. God, help us to go ahead and be rooted and established in that for this season while you call us into next chapters. And so I just thank you. Thank you for our time. Thank you for this panel and this conversation, and open our eyes to what you're showing us, even if we're stuck. Amen. Guys, thank you so much. We'll continue our 90,000 series next week.